Hey everybody, welcome to Korean Atlanta Mentorship. So we don't teach this thing called velocity banking anymore. In fact, the term velocity banking is banned now, and I'll tell you why. The state of Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulation Division of Banking sent a cease and desist letter to Novo Elite Incorporated and Accelerated Strategies LLC. So what is that? It's basically the Kwok brothers, the companies that they operate to sell velocity banking services. And if you look at the cease and desist letter right here, basically they took action against them, fined them, I believe, $20,000. And the reason why they did that is because they did not have the division's approval to use the words bank, banker, or banking in connection with their businesses, right? So if you don't know who the Kwok brothers are, just type in Kwok brothers, right, on YouTube, and then they're really huge, 346,000 subscribers on YouTube. Okay, much bigger than my channel. And so now that I understand the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulation, we've decided not to teach this thing called velocity banking anymore. In fact, the term velocity banking is now banned from Korean Atlanta Mentorship. We're calling it the velocity debt cannonball because we cannot use the word banking because we are not a bank. Okay. And yeah, that's kind of like if you're a restaurant consulting group, I guess the Department of Food Service or whatever it is, the health department finds you because you're not a restaurant, right? That is what the state government has decided to do. And you know what's funny? I get emails from time to time from people's personal email accounts where they kind of tell me they work or worked for the federal government. It's weird how like people who worked for the federal government are really excited about this velocity banking thing and tell me about it in their personal email account. But the state of Illinois, the state itself is like, no, no, you can't do that because you're people might be confused that you might be a bank even though you're not a bank. Okay, so that's why we can't use the term anymore. Okay, so anyways, instead of teaching velocity banking, which is a banned word, we're going to teach the velocity debt cannonball method. Remember, velocity banking doesn't exist anymore. It's the velocity debt cannonball method. Okay, and I stole this from one of the commenters on the YouTube channel. So that's what we're going to do today, the velocity debt cannonball method. No banks here. We're not a bank, and we don't do business in the state of Illinois. In fact, we don't even do business at all. I'm just a content creator. All right, so what is the velocity debt cannonball method? Okay, well, basically, it's a debt payoff strategy where you throw all of your money into debt with the help of something called a line of credit. And so we have the average American, man, I got to take out this word. I should call it the average American debt cannonball, right? Small cannonball, limp cannonball, I don't know what to call it, but the average American right here. So basically, they get paid in their checking account and then they're expected to pay all of their bills, including their debts, and then put the leftover in checking and savings, right? And so we see here we have a leftover of negative $159.46. So in this situation, there's no way you can survive, right? It's unfeasible. So what we're going to go over is that even with the same income and the same expenses and the same debt, right? We can get from a negative to a positive. All right. And so, what is the first step to this velocity debt cannonball method? It's not saving money. So, whether you're a negative or a positive, and obviously it's much better if you're a positive in your checking and savings, we're not going to save money. That's a very intentional thought and idea that we're going to have as we go along with our debt payoff journey. So, if you listen to Dave Ramsey, he says the first step is saving $1,000. But if you're negative right here, how are you going to save $1,000? You'll go a negative $1,000, not even be able to save that in no time if you do banking at this pace, right? Oh, can't say that word. Not a bank. If you do the average American cannonball at this pace, okay? So this is what we're going to do. we're going to increase our cash flow. We're deliberately not going to save money. And remember, when you create this budget, you have to list every single debt that you have, right? So these are all the debts that we have: 5 credit cards, an auto loan, a student loan, and a mortgage. And then on top of that, we have our monthly expenses that are not tied to debt. So we have to separate the debts, those are purposely in black font, versus the non debts that we always have to pay for, even if we're debt free. Okay. And then so what we're going to do is we're going to um, use a formula called the cash flow index. So if you don't know what that is, it's basically a formula of the debt balance divided by the payment. And so we do this for all the debts that we have, and then this will tell us the order of the debt that we paid off. So think of it as a ranking or sorting system. So if our cash flow index is at a very low number, so let's say the 20s and 30s, that means we have to pay those off first because we get more bang for our buck for paying off those debts compared to, let's say, a 30-year mortgage. So why do we not want to pay off the 30-year mortgage first? It's because I literally have to give someone $230,000 for a $1,400 payment back in my cash flow, right? Whereas if I only pay this $30,000 credit card and this $15,000 credit card, so that's $45,000, I'll get the same amount of cash flow compared to that $230,000 mortgage, okay? And so what we're going to do is assume that we have a line of credit, right? So this is what we're going to be our main operating account. And if you don't know what a line of credit is, basically it's a financial tool almost like a credit card where you can pull money, pay it back, and use it over and over again. But the only difference between a line of credit and a credit card is that the line of credit you can usually use to pay for whatever you want. And you can pull out the money into your checking account, whereas a credit card, it's a little bit harder, even though a credit card is technically a line of credit, right? So we're going to assume we have a $150,000 home equity line of credit, free and clear, available to us. Now, would the bank give you a $150,000 home equity line of credit when you're negative cash flow? The answer to that is no. And I have to really emphasize this because people really get excited about the velocity debt cannonball strategy, and they're like, well, I just go to a line of credit. I just need a line of credit, right? But timing and order matters, right? Because banks only want to lend to a certain type of person. And it's the only type of person they want to lend to is a person who does not need money. Because the bank is either a vampire or a leech. And if you're a vampire, you want to look for people with fresh blood. If someone has been tapped out of their blood because essentially they've had their blood drained by all the other banks, aka vampires, they have no more blood to drain. So when the bank sees that through your credit reports, your income, they'll be like, this person has no more blood in their system. So we cannot lend you money because you actually need it. And they know just from their many years of institutional experience that people who need money don't pay you back, right? That's why landlords do the same thing with like credit checks and you know, income checks, right? So because a person who needs money, right, or doesn't have enough money is not going to pay you what you're supposed to be paid, right? That's why people are usually very strict about that, especially nowadays with 3 times the rent because they want to make sure you make enough money. So why do we use a free and clear line of credit? The reason why we use a free and clear line of credit because it's extremely easy to demonstrate the benefits of this if you had known this strategy before you got into this mess, and you would probably never even be here, right? That's essentially why. And I'm lazy, and I have a realistic case scenario of 22 debts paid off with $5,000 of income and $4 left over in the beginning in a live stream for 99 cents. So if you want to see that, join the YouTube channel membership. All right, so let's go ahead and use the cash flow index and figure out which debts we move to the line of credit. So we have these 5 credit cards here with these low cash flow index numbers. And how much credit card debt do we have? 5, 8, 15, 27, 30. So let's go ahead and sum it up. I'm going to go ahead and sum it up. So that's $85,000 of credit card debt. Okay, so let's just move these low cash flow index numbers, $85,000 of credit card debt balance, into the line of credit. Okay, then guess what happens here? Oh my goodness. Okay, even though our income is the same, we literally turn this negative into a positive. right? We literally turned this negative into a positive. And we did it just by simply shifting to some debt. Again, same income. So you see how the income is the same? $7,000 with the velocity debt cannonball method. $7,000, same income. We just shift some expenses and somehow we turn this negative $159 to $2,668.04 by essentially not saving money and then using your line of credit as your main operating account. So the final step is to make sure we don't save money. We dump all of our money into the line of credit and then take out our expenses when we need to pay them and then rinse and repeat over and over again. So this $4,331.96 will be used to pay for the auto loan, student loan, mortgage, and our other general expenses, right? So we're going to go ahead and do that and realize that if you make a $7,000 payment into an $85,000 balance on line of credit, that's going to be way more than the minimum payment, right? So the payment, it's almost like it kind of exists, but it doesn't, right? It technically does exist, but it doesn't, right? So 2,608.84. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take the average daily balance, multiply by the interest rate, and then divide by 12, right? So interest rate's 8%, typical of a home equity line of credit, especially if you get it from a credit union. And look at that. Look at that. The balance, like we started off of a negative, right? How do we go from a negative where our debt is increasing every single month because we got, well, actually, not our debt. Well, technically, it is a debt because if it's negative in our checking account, then that's a debt that we owe to the bank, right? So negative in our checking account to just our debt easily decreasing every single month. Look how smooth that is. Okay. Like I did not make more money to pay off the debt. I didn't. At least in this simulation of the velocity debt cannonball method, can't say velocity banking. All right. So now we see that in 36 months, that debt is gone. That credit card debt is gone. 36 months. So now in 3 years, we paid off 85K of debt. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste. And then we have three more debts, which is the auto loan, student loan, and the mortgage. Okay. So now, how do we know what the current balance is? Well, luckily, I got this debt calculator that tells me the current balance of all these debts, right? So all I got to do is type in 36, right? So you see right here, the auto loan, the student loan, and the mortgage. You type in the three main factors of a loan, which is the balance, the original balance, the interest rate, and the term. It'll give you the monthly payment, and then you type in the current month, and it'll give you the current balance as well as the current cash flow index, right? So what we're going to do is use that cash flow index to determine which debts to pay off, and we see right here $10,000, right? $10,000 for $449 a payment, or $30,000 for 444. Obviously, I'm going to pay this one off first because I get more cash flow. So let's go ahead and do that and get rid of this sucker right here. So I'm going to move this auto loan into the line of credit. So plus 10,451.48, right? And then, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Zero auto loan, right? So now our cash flow has increased to over $3,000, right? Over $3,000. And look how easy this is. Oh my goodness. Like all I gotta do is just move debt at the appropriate time, increase our cash flow, and then rinse and repeat over and over again. 3117.25. And then let's go ahead and see when it pays off, and pays off in 40 months. Okay. So we got it paid off. And look at the interest, 55, 35, and $14. Okay. So not a big deal that we moved that 3% loan into the line of credit at this time. So let me go ahead and go here. So what was the month? It was month 40. Okay, month 40. So I'm just going to do this right here. 40 months, and then this is going to be 85 plus 25, and then it'll be right here. And how much is that? It's 110K. And then now what we have is a student loan and the mortgage. So let's see at month 40, 40, 40, and then this is zero. So we got two loans now, right? So we see that this has the lowest cash flow index. Now, that's something that you have to be aware about is that you don't want to necessarily move the entire loan into a line of credit, especially if you're not getting that much cash flow. So if you ever looked at the explanation of the cash flow index, it's basically saying anything under 50, it's okay to pay off, and anything above 50, you kind of be a little bit, I guess, cautious. And then anything over 100, you don't really want to pay off, right? But we can still pay it off using a line of credit, but we don't pay off the whole thing. We just do something called chunking. So even if you have like a 3% mortgage and you're moving a piece of the loan into the line of credit, it will still pay off quickly. You'll still have the interest savings. Now, if the difference between the loan and the line of credit is really, really great, so let's say I have a 0% loan and I'm paying it off with an 8% line of credit, this is what I've seen in my experience, that it's only like a $2,000 actually, well, it depends on your cash flow, right? But I've seen even with the 8% line of credit, in many scenarios, you only pay like $2,000 of interest if you even if you use an 8% line of credit. Now, I don't know why you do that if you have a 0% loan, but that's essentially what happens, right? And so now let's go ahead and use this chunking method where we're just going to move a piece of the loan into the line of credit. And basically, we have this calculator right here. It's the band calculator, right? Band, because I can't say this word. It's now I got to call it the debt cannonball calculator. Okay. So what we do is we just put in the factors of the loan here, right? So let me just kind of do this here. And then I'm just going to, what is the original balance of that student loan? It's $40,000, 4 years 000. And then the current balance is 29,221.62, 29,221.62. And then the interest rate, or instead of term, is 10 years. How much is for a student loan? 6%. And then the payment amount is 444.08, 444.08. And then let's do the income and the expenses. So the expenses is everything except for the loan we're trying to pay off right here. So that would just be these two, copy and paste, and then I'm going to go ahead and sum them up. So that's 3438.66. So we're trying to pay off this loan. We don't include that in our expense calculation because it's accounted for actually in this section right here. And then 3438.66. So let me just do this. 3438.66. And then we see that that student loan that we definitely feared for some time, it's not an issue anymore, right? We get it, we got rid of it in under a year. Okay, sweet. So now this is what we're going to do. So it's going to be 40 plus 0.7 times 12. So that'll be meaning that in about 49 months, right? 49 months, that student loan is paid off. So that's 150K. And then we just do the same thing with our mortgage, right? So in 49 months, what's the balance of our mortgage? I type in 49 right here. It's 218, and we're going to chunk away the mortgage. So even though the mortgage is at a lower interest rate, we'll be fine. Right, we'll be fine. So let me just go ahead and do this. And why do we do chunking? One of the reasons why we let's say not make extra payments is we don't want to segregate our income. That really is how we got here in the first place. Think about it. Your money comes in and then it gets split all over the place and then you have nothing left over. That's the average American debt cannonball method, okay? The average American debt cannonball method. So here we're just going to do this right here. So let me put in 230,000. So 23000. I think it's 6.4%, 30 years. And then what's the current balance? It's 218,164.25, 218,164.25. And then the payment amount is 1438.66, 1438.66. And then the expenses, I believe, is now $2,000 a month. So let me just check right here. Because remember, it's everything except for the loan we're trying to pay off. So we're trying to pay off the mortgage. So we have our $2,000 of monthly expenses right here. And then look at this, paid off in 4.2 years. And you know what's crazy? Okay. Let's say we used a 15% line of credit to pay this off. We're literally doubling the interest rate. That's 1 grand more and a little bit longer. Now, if we use a 30% credit card, look at this. Just 4 grand more from the 15% interest rate. So I think it's like 5 or 6 grand more from the 8% line of credit, and the time is still the same. Isn't that crazy? I'm totally blown away by this because yeah, you should get the lowest interest rate, but sometimes people get so fearful about the interest rate, and they're not thinking about just their cash flow, their entire holistic cash flow in general, which is what we need to think about, right? In the velocity debt cannonball method. All right. Well, so this is now 0. Let me go here. So it's 4.2 years. So I don't know if you ever watched those videos where it's like, oh, pay off your mortgage in 7, 10 years. We did it in four, folks. 49 divided by 12 plus 4.2, 8.28 years, and then we're, I think, 380K debt free. Okay. All right. Well, that's it for today, folks. This is a Korean Lantern Mentorship. We don't teach velocity banking here. That's a banned word. It's a banned word, according to the State Department, Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulation. We cannot use that word, and we're just being a little bit cautious, even though we don't do business in Illinois, right? And then can't use the term accelerated banking, accelerated and velocity banking. Can't use that. Cannot use that. Cease and desist. Okay. All right. Well, that's it for today, folks. This is Korean Lanta Mentorship here with another video. That's right, 2 videos in one day. And we're at 4,500 subscribers already. So once we get to 10,000, I don't know what we'll do. It's going to be a party here rocking the velocity debt cannonball method. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video.